Hello and welcome to the Albion Obsessed podcast. We join you on the back of two games against Liverpool, which didn't go exactly as we hoped they would go. But before we speak more about those games, let's see who we've got on the podcast today. We are international today. We welcome Dagan. Dagan, my friend, how are you doing?
All right. You know, it's fall, but it's warm here in the sunny states. And really wish we were coming off a win, but we're not. Onward to next weekend. I'm going to leave it to that. Phil.
Indeed. And we are also joined from down under. What time is it there, Phil?
Good morning, all. It is about 20 to 8 this morning. I know I'm running a couple of minutes late, so I do apologise. But yeah, we've reached that part of the year where the time differences are actually okay, because I know we're trying to organise some podcasts at the end of last season to do the awards and stuff like that. And to join, I was going to have to get up at like 4 a.m. So this is a bit more chill.
Commitment to the cause, Phil. That's what we want. So you've given us your time this morning, and we can't be more happy to have you back on the podcast. We were meant to be joined as well by Mr. Thomas Budgeon, but he is a little bit sick, so that sucks. And I haven't even put our lovely graphics on the screen. Boom, there we go. Look at that. There's Ferdy Kadioglu and a very happy Fabian Hertzler. Before we get into the rigmarole, let's see what we've got in the comments. We've got Joseph. What's up, guys? Hope you're having a great Monday. It's Tuesday for Phil now.
That's correct.
Phil says good evening and good day. Alex says evening, guys. Alex, how are you doing, mate? I hope your travels are going well. I think you're traveling at the moment. And Joanna says evening, my lovelies. Evening to you as well. Before we talk about the game, Phil, let's get a quick catch up with you, my friend, because we haven't spoken to you since we had a certain Italian manager in the dugout. So, first of all, what have you made of Fabian Hertzler's start to life on the English South Coast?
That's a tough question, isn't it? Particularly after the last week that I think we had. I think 7 days ago, probably more inclined to say like somewhat satisfied, reasonably happy, I suppose. We're kind of still within striking distance of that top four as far as the Premier League is concerned. We were still in another cup, albeit a cup really that no one cares about. And then at the end of the day, why should two losses against one of the best clubs in Europe really change that? I don't know, to be honest, but I suppose just given the circumstances of the weekend's league match, maybe things look a little bit different because a worrying trend has now formed in recent weeks, I suppose, which I'm sure we'll dive into. And that's probably one of the other reasons why it's disappointing not to have Tom on, because he was ready to have some really strong things to say just about how things went at Anfield on the weekend. But I would say overall, with the Hertzler experience so far, I'm whelmed, because I'm not really overwhelmed or underwhelmed necessarily, but I think there's certainly been enough to work with. I have appreciated some of the the differences between Hertzler ball and De Zerbi ball. Even though we're still conceding goals, I don't feel like we're the defensive laughing stock that we were under him, which is really nice as a fan. That said, I don't really feel like we're close to having our attack firing on all cylinders yet either. But I do think that there's enough there to feel optimistic about where that is heading as well. This is only the weekend was only the second loss that we've experienced in the league under Hertzler. So, I'm not really feeling overly negative about the whole situation yet, but there's there's so much more meat on the bone as well. So I'm sure we will continue to dive into it, but there's enough there to work with to feel sort of, optimistic going forward.
Yeah, and what have you made of our massive transfer window that we've had? Obviously, brought in a lot of new players. One player that we haven't seen nearly enough of just yet, getting injured 6 minutes into his debut. But obviously, Ferdi Kadioglu getting his second goal for the Albion, his first Premier League goal. Jorginho playing a part whilst João Pedro's out injured. So, what have you made of our new signings?
I think it's just an important point in in how we feel overall about this team as well, is the fact that we've brought in so many new players. We've got a new manager and all these new players that are trying to be installed into the style of football that we're playing, and that is going to take time. So we do need to be patient, but I mean, I think if we went through individually with all the new players that we've brought in, we'd probably have mixed emotions about how some of them are going versus how others of them have looked in the lineup so far. So, I think we've seen some really positive things out of certain players, and we probably were expecting more out of other players as well. But considering that we're referencing back to all of the new players that we brought in over the summer as well, it's important that we don't now begin to start looking ahead to January and going, what are these extra moves that we can make to yield better results? Because the reality is Dagan and you, Joe, and others were referencing all summer, at the end of the summer window, that we've almost done 2 years worth of spending in that summer transfer window. So to now expect that more moves are going to be made in January to fix whatever problems you might have with this team, that's delusional thinking. Everything that we have to succeed is inside the four walls right now. And yes, maybe next summer we lose one or two more players as this club continues to operate the way that we know that it will. But we've got more than enough inside those four walls to have success as a club, to push for top four, to push for Europe again next season. It's just about all those things starting to come together now. So I felt surprised by how much we spent and how many players we brought in a good way. So there's no reason to think that the group that is inside that place right now can't enjoy success this season.
Yeah, I mean, Dagan is someone that very much looks forward to every transfer window and runs the very special transfer tracker that you can all check out at BHA Fan USA. What do you think of Phil's comments there? Do you look at January as a chance to fix some issues, or do you just look at it as a way to sort of build for the future a little bit more? Obviously, we've got Diego Gomez coming in, which has been widely reported as almost done. And is another signing for the future, really. So, yeah, what do you see in January?
Well, I think if it's an opportunity for anything, it might be for some sales, moving out some pieces that we feel like don't have a spot or a firm spot, and we'd rather give minutes to other guys. Discussion of Lamptey, for example, great going forward, a complete liability at the back. That, does he have a place? Are we potentially at any point going to be at our best going forward with him on the pitch? I think that's a real question. So if we could get something from him, I forget when his contract is up, but that comes to mind. I'm not sold that we need to add anything else. I might like another center back if we were able to send a center back out. I think we'd have too crowded of a room with everybody healthy, but we haven't seen everybody healthy. I could point out the last time we had our starting center back pairing was September 22nd. September 22nd was the last time we had Van Hecke and Dunk together in the lineup. We're still unbeaten with that pairing And so for all the hand wringing about, conceding late goals, it doesn't help when we're, not at our best at the back. So yeah, I remain optimistic. I'm not thinking much about January. I haven't even started updating the tracker, to be truthful, Joe. But I don't think we'll see a lot of action there. Certainly not on the buying side. And if we do, I think you're right, for the future. Maybe we have our eyes on some young prospects that we feel like we can bring in, and perhaps loan out immediately. But I don't think we're going to see anybody other than Gomez come into the team. Question from Milton: what will Gomez bring to the party? Your guess is as good as mine, but he is, as indefatigable as a player as you're going to find. I mean, he is pure energy incarnate. I love
Dagan's
Gomez.
the one to ask though about that. You're undeniably the most excited Gomez fan.
Yeah. Oh, I love him. I hope he lights a fire under Enciso too, because we haven't seen Enciso's best in a long, long time, and they seem to be close. Always walking through the tunnel together. You see them for Paraguay, excuse me, even before the Brighton links, they seem to be good friends. So maybe that'll bolster young Enciso, and he can reach the level where he thinks he already is. Yeah, enough about that. Thanks for the question, Joe. Phil, it's good to have you back, buddy. Good to see your face.
It's nice
I'll
to
be
be
awake
back.
at the same time.
Good old, yeah. We're just surrounded by accents now at the moment, so it's great. And get used to it, people, because we hope to have Phil on a lot more during the winter months if we can get his availability lined up with ours. It's always good to see you, Phil. So yeah, good to have you back. Let's then switch our focus. I don't think we'll. Do we talk about the Carabao Cup game? Shall we? No, let's just gloss over that. Dagan's like, no. I mean, let's just start with the starting lineup of what we saw on Saturday. It was Bart Verbruggen in goal, a back four of Veltman, Van Hecke, Igor Estupinian, Fotmob saying a midfield four of Kadioglu, Hinshelwood, Ayari, and Matoma, and Rutter and Welbeck up top. First of all, Phil, the Welbeck-Jorginho partnership continues, I think, forcefully, because obviously we haven't got many other options to play there at the moment. What have you made of that fruitful partnership that's been forming between those two under trying circumstances?
We can't complain, right? I mean, to be yielding what we're getting out of Danny Welbeck at this point in his career, I mean, he's been exceptional this season, and Jorginho's obviously been one of the bright spots of the players that we brought in over the summer. I suppose the chatter on him when we did bring him across from Leeds was that, he's rocks and diamonds. It could be anything. It could be, he could have these great moments. It could be a disaster. We've definitely seen the best out of him, and it was obvious quickly that he will and is going to be a key part of what we're trying to do up top. Herzl clearly has huge raps on him. He gave him opportunities straight away, and those have continued, and those have proven justified as well. We all love his effort and intent to go and win the ball as well, as a defensive presence in that in the top half of the pitch as well. And he, albeit he missed one or two decent opportunities on the weekend, he has taken some chances as well. He's set up goals for Welbeck as well. So that pairing in Joao Pedro's absence has been good. Like, I don't think really we can have any complaints about what those two have been able to do up there.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair enough. Dagan, we saw Freddie Kadioglu starting in a more advanced role yet again. Obviously, that was successful with him scoring in the first half quite early on. Do you think we're going to see, like, and we haven't seen much of him, but quite a transformative season for him? He's always mostly played at fullback, but Fabian Herzl seems to like to operate him on that right-hand side especially. And when he has played fullback, he's looked a little bit defensively suspect. So do you think that could be a new role for Ferdy?
I think we may see him move all over. I really do. Yeah, I think he's a soccer player. Football player, you might say. But no, I just think he's versatile. I mean, the quality of the strike that found the net, despite Kelleher getting his hands on it. I mean, it was, dare I say, maybe the best strike of the season. Really impressed with him going forward. Most of his defensive weaknesses have come from just being a little bit out of position or being a little too deep in some cases and causing players on the far side of the pitch to be onside. In the first half yesterday, especially, his hustle and effort to get back and help defend from the midfield was exceptional. And I think, to your point, maybe that is where we'll see him at his best, when he is sprinting back to help, but not sprinting back to be the primary container of the wide players, because he does get forward so well and should get forward. But as for whether he'll settle into a position on the right or on the left or at midfield or at right back, I would predict that he doesn't settle into a position. I would predict Hinchelwood maybe never fully settles into one position either. I still think our best right back is Jack Hinchelwood. I know he's not a right back. I think he's our best right back. Just because I think he's bigger. He's the best combination of size and pace that we can put in that role, right? He's not as physical as Veltman, but he is about the same height. But he is at least as fast as everyone else that plays outside back, except maybe Lamptey. But again, offers a physicality that Lamptey doesn't have. Sorry, didn't mean to turn this question into a question about Hinchelwood, but I do think those guys are similar in that we want to get them both in the lineup, and where we put them may often depend on the pieces that go around them.
Yeah. Do you not then run the risk of shoehorning people into the side, Dagan? Shall I open that can of worms again?
You can open that can of worms all you want, and I'll say the great difference is I think these guys bring a lot of the same kinds of strengths that Pascal Gross brought, without bringing the pace liability that he did present when he was out there. And look, I know it's sacrilege, and I know everyone loves Pascal Gross, but the reality is he's painfully slow, and we put him out there with other painfully slow players, and we wondered why we hemorrhaged goals. That's why we hemorrhaged goals. So I said it then, I'll say it now. I know he's sacred, but you have to build a team around a player like that in ways that limit the other choices you can make. And if you don't limit those choices, you have some real problems. I don't think that's the case with Hinchelwood. Maybe a bit with Kadioglu, but Hinchelwood for me is so good all around, despite his age and despite maybe the lack of pedigree that some would like to see. He's just proven himself again and again and again wherever he's been put. Kadioglu, I think, is getting up to speed still. And I think it's just way too early to pass any judgment on any of these new guys. And I think also on all of the young guys in our camp. We have not seen the best of any player in our squad, save for maybe Lewis Dunk at this point. Veltman, right? Like, I'm trying to think who else. Solly March, right? Steele, Danny Welbeck.
Particularly given the nature of the young progressive manager that we've brought in as well, that plays this, pretty bonkers style of football. Like, it shouldn't be a shock that Ferdy and other guys have looked a little bit unsure about their role in the team coming in. So, the season is still quite young. And all of these guys, they were coming in off really not a lot of football at that point in time as well. So I suppose none of this really should be a surprise.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Joseph has just pointed out something really interesting in the chat, that it's been almost 10 games into the season, plus cup games, and Brighton haven't seen a penalty shot as of yet. We've not had a penalty this season. Come on, boys. We need to get some more touches in boxes and get people to kick the crap out of us so we can get a penalty.
Well, it's not. Joao Pedro, he's normally not just the one scoring them, but he's the one, that's that's conceding that's being given the free kick as well, or the penalty. So maybe that has something to do with it.
Very, very true. And maybe I wouldn't want us to get a penalty whilst we've got Joao Pedro out. Well, you would bank on Danny Welbeck to score one at the moment. You watch, we're going to get a penalty against Man City this week, and then Welbeck's going to miss. I've said it now. Dagan, you gave me a great segue into talking about the midfield. And I'll come to you first, Phil. Just talk to you about our midfield pairing at the weekend. Yasin Iyari, who, according to FOTMob, got a 7.9 rating, which is a very high rating for a team on the losing end. And obviously Jack Hinshelwood coming back in after, I believe he was out due to illness the week before against Wolves. Can't remember if he played the cup game. But obviously came straight back into that midfield pairing. I would say in midfield, that's where we've got the most variety of players and different midfielders that can play different roles. What have you made of this very, very young sort of midfield pairing of Yasin Iyari and Jack Hinshelwood, what we've seen over the last couple of games?
Yeah, well, as Dagan pointed out in our private chat earlier, it was good to see Hinshelwood kind of going head to head with McAllister in that game. That was a lot of fun. Yasin Iyari, I mean, I think we'll talk more about him as this podcast continues to unfold, and we potentially bring up our player of the match for the game at Anfield as well, because he was outstanding for 55 minutes in that game. Almost a lot of the things that we created in attack either came from him winning the ball back for us or being involved in the build-up play. And he was clearly one of the bright spots for us in that match. There was an incident in about the 55th minute, and where he wins another ball, but he kind of gets his ankle rolled up on. It sort of happened at the same time as when Estupiñán and Trent Alexander-Arnold got involved in a little bit of push and shove, as you might recall. I'm pretty sure that's the moment where he had his ankle sort of rolled up on, and it looked bad. Like when you looked at the replay, it looks like this could be one that, oh dear, here goes another bloody ankle to a midfielder playing for us. Shout out to Matt O'Reilly, who it sounds like will be back shortly. But it was interesting to see him play on after that, because I know we're sort of jumping ahead here again, but after that, it looks like he was hindered, and perhaps that could have led to one or two of the goals that went back the other way, because maybe it's at that point in time we could have saved our lead by making one or two subs. But up until that point, he was one of our best players. He was outstanding, and we needed someone else to emerge as a good midfield alternative, given that, we have lost Pascal Gross and others in the last couple of seasons, and we are looking to find some good midfield options outside of Carlos Baleba as well, who obviously had this minor knee complaint going into the game. Obviously still healthy enough to be included on the bench, but he wasn't used. So that was a bit of a weird one. But Iyari looks really promising.
Yeah, he's someone that I highlighted after the Newcastle game. Had an excellent game against them. Was primarily playing on the left-hand side, so he is one of those players that you can sort of slot into different roles on the pitch. Obviously, when Matoma wasn't ready to start against Newcastle, and he comes on and plays so well. Dagan, what have you made of Yasin in the side at the moment?
I mean, he was, as Phil said, he was phenomenal. He was phenomenal. I just rewatched the first half today, and breathtaking, really. What this brings to mind for me, and Phil, I think you're right. He did look limited, hindered after that. What looked like a pretty substantial roll of his ankle. We have the depth to substitute in ways that I think we're not yet because of the fact that so many guys have missed time. And I could see us making decisions around replacing our midfield in a game where we're trying to see the game out, to have a more defensive group, more athleticism, more pace. I could see us, choosing what we felt like our best creators to come on if we needed to chase a game from behind. So much of what I feel like Herzler is going to be able to do with this depth in midfield and depth on the wing is to move these pieces around at the start of a match and in the middle of a match. And we've seen him get some substitutions right. Phil noted that the cup substitutions felt odd, and they did. But we also started 9 different players from the preceding game. I think there's just a lot that's still being figured out. But the more I see, the more I feel really, really good about the pieces the manager has at his disposal. And to a degree that has not been the case previously. They're not all finished products. We're not sure exactly what their best looks like, but in terms of the talent that we see these guys can bring, I think there's more in the bag for the manager than has been the case previously. There's also just not a ton of experience in the Premier League for these guys. And so that's going to take some time. I want to talk a lot about where we are and talk about the big picture, but I'm going to hold that as we talk about the game. But I'm here for the big picture conversation.
I'd also just jump in. If Jorginho puts away that chance in the 27th minute, then we're all sitting here just waxing lyrical about the pass from Ayari, and it would have been his assist. So that was just another moment, just a beautiful pass. So that was again one of those costly moments in the match, unfortunately.
Yeah, we've got a very quick comment in the chat, Phil. If you could give us an Aussie perspective on Cam Pupion, who is scoring regularly. Am I saying that right, by the way, Phil? Is that an Australian name? Who's scoring regularly for the under-21s? What have you made of him in the youth squad, and do you expect to see him in the starting, not starting 11, but the first team soon?
I unfortunately don't watch enough of the 21s really to make a educated comment on that. We've only seen him a couple of times for the senior side, obviously holding out hope that he can continue to develop into a good player, but I'd be BSing my way through an answer there, so I'm just going to be honest about that.
Phil's hoping that Australia have finally found a good enough football player to replace the legacy of Tim Cahill. We'll remains to be seen.
We're battling right now from an international perspective. I'll say that much. The fact that we went to Japan and held on for a draw in that game was in the last international break was frankly a miracle.
Is Matty Ryan still kicking around for you guys?
He didn't get the starts actually in the last window, so there is there's finally a bit of a transition happening on that front as well.
No shocks there. Enough about Matty Ryan. We'll move on. He was great for us in the first Premier League season, so I can't be too harsh on him.
Thankfully, Aaron's not on this podcast right now to add his 2 cents.
Exactly. We all know Aaron is our resident goalkeeping expert, and he would have a few choice words to say about Matty Ryan, that's for sure. The first half of football at Anfield was pretty spectacular. We played some incredible football, and as you say, Phil, we could have easily gone into half-time 2-0 up against, as you guys have referenced at the start of the podcast, one of the best teams in Europe and title contenders. Arsenal lost at the weekend, City lost at the weekend. This was a really important win for Liverpool. Let's just get that on the table as well. But I think that's where the frustration comes in a little bit. And I'm going to sort of fight Tom's corner as much as he would have wanted to fight this on the podcast, because when you have a performance like that, I think it's very much a case of it's the hope that kills you. Because when you play that well for 45 minutes and you have so many opportunities to score more than one goal and just stamp your authority on the game and say, look, you guys are going to have to really come out in the second half to beat us. I think that's where the frustration comes in the way that there was 3 minutes of madness in the second half that ultimately lost us the game. And I think it's coupled with the fact that just a week earlier, we saw what happened against Wolves. And we were 2-0 up, cruising, had the opportunity to make it 3-1. I'm not going to name any names because I think it's harsh to drag names into it when there was, a whole team that should have done better with the Wolves goals. I think that's where the frustration comes, is that there's so many opportunities to be better. And there's so many opportunities to have us sat in dreamland in the Premier League. And we know that we can be better. We know that we can beat Ipswich. We know we can beat Wolves. And it's not happened. We know that we can hold out for a really tight 1-0 win like we did against Newcastle. So for me, seeing that we played so well in the first half just adds to my frustration with the fact that we've come out in that second half and not let Liverpool, because I don't think we let Liverpool steamroll us. I don't think we just sort of rolled over for them. But we had the opportunity to build a much better foundation to defend what should have been a 2-3-0 lead. And not taking those opportunities in the Premier League, especially at Anfield, you're going to get punished for it. And Tom said at half time, we're going to live to rue these chances. And we did. So, Dagan, let's talk about the first Liverpool goal. Probably slightly fortuitous, the way it sort of goes over every single person and finds its way into the back of the net. Do you think there was like a slight deflection anywhere as it came through, or do you think it was just blinded so Verbruggen couldn't get there?
First, I'm going to say slightly fortuitous for them. It was very lucky. It was accident. It was an accidental goal. If we had won and that was the difference, Brighton fans would be talking about how lucky we were to win and still bemoaning, the chances we gave up. Yeah, the reality is for better or worse, games are decided on such things. And the shot went in the back. The pass went in the back of the net because it was a pass. I don't think it was deflected. At first glance, I thought it was, but after watching the angles, it looked like it was just Gakpo, again, finding form that he has not shown in quite some time in both games against us. That was a frustrating part. Diaz has been sensational. Diaz was one I was worried about. Gakpo gets all these minutes and tears us apart. Yeah, it's frustrating. I don't feel like we rolled over. I do feel like we ran out of gas. We defended with real urgency throughout. There were many times where their pressure won the ball and they went the other way. We just stopped it. And I think we just ran out of gas a little bit. The second goal, Igor was caught, a little out where he probably shouldn't have been in a 1-1 game. Little tiny margins.
Can I just point out that we ran out of gas, conceded 2 goals in 3 minutes, and then it was at that point Fabian Hertzler decided to make the substitutions.
Yeah.
So do you think, does that come down to inexperience? Does it come down to just poor timing? What does that come down to?
Guys are giving it their all until they're not. And I think, again, he's still learning the capabilities of each guy. And if things are going well, it's really hard to make a change when it looks like the guys out there got it under control. Yeah, especially without, were you going to take Igor off and put Webster on? That doesn't seem like an option anybody would have been rooting for. Weaver, though he is a defensive midfielder, he doesn't have the pace of some of the guys we had out there. Again, we probably should have taken Ari off when he looked like he wasn't 100%. That if I was going to pick hindsight somewhere, but again, if a guy's having the game that he was having and says, no, I'm good, you trust your guy and probably let him see it out if you can. So I can't find it in me to be critical of the manager, because again, the dream is to go there and be in position to win the game, and we were. The guys that got us in that position, I think got worn down by the effort. But again, is that mentally, physically, a little bit of both? Probably a little bit of both.
That's the thing. So I would note that in the 47th minute, Gomez, who'd replaced Kanate at the half, he bursts through for a free header from a set piece, heads it straight to Verbruggen, of course. But there was probably a concentration lapse at that point in time. At the 50th minute, we cleared a ball, and Liverpool, and at that point, the home crowd started to really grow in voice. At that point, it did feel like we were switching into survival mode, and they were switching into, all right, we're building here towards something mode. That was in the 50th minute. In the 53rd minute, McAllister headed one off a Gakpo cross and forced a really good save from Verbruggen as well. And at that period in the game, it just felt like maybe Fabian Hertzler, with the benefit of hindsight, would have done something at that. And it was the 55th minute, which I mentioned, when Ari had the ankle issue, but perhaps around that 50th, 52nd minute, we looked to get a fresh set of legs in the middle there somewhere, not necessarily for Ari or Hinshelwood, but, just at that point, maybe you do look to do something just to inject something into that game, to stop what inevitably happening soon after that.
We always talk about the effects of the atmosphere in the crowd when the momentum is in our favour, and the atmosphere at the Amex is electric, and it seems to spur the team on to go on to achieve something incredible. And something that I've noted from reading Twitter over the last sort of 48, 72 hours is that the Albion fans that went are saying that that's probably one of the best atmospheres they've ever experienced in England. And so I think we have to sort of, and myself included, because I was as negative as anyone after the game, but we have to sort of remember where we were playing, who we were playing. And it's just worth mentioning as well that in around the 64th minute, Liverpool fans would have been given notification that Man City have just gone 2-0 down away to Bournemouth. So that shift in fan feeling around the stadium, and they go on to score in the 69th minute. So it was just building and building and building. And that's what you get at Anfield sometimes, is the team literally sucking the ball into the net. And yeah, when you've got Mo Salah running at you as well, and you allow him that much space on his left foot, it's deadly. It really is. So whilst there's nitpicky little bits that we have, as fans feel like we've got to say, when you look at the bigger picture, which we'll talk about in a minute, Dagan, I know you're itching to talk about the bigger picture. Yeah, I think you just have to concede to it and just say that's just what it is.
Sadly, what happened, not being able to defend that 1-0 lead at Anfield, it was only amplified because of what happened the week before at Wolves, before at home against Wolves. That's the bottom line. If we don't end up dropping those 2 points to Wolves, we're level with Arsenal, Chelsea, and Aston Villa. It's 3 pretty big clubs on the league table right now. That's the difference. And so when you are up 1-0 at Anfield and that result doesn't eventuate, then you're just upset because an unfortunate trend appears to be forming.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on, Phil. Without any means to moan more about the performance and us losing another lead, let's just sort of end our match analysis here, unless any of you guys have got anything else to say about the match before I go on to player of the match.
I don't know if I'm lagging, Joe. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. Have to compliment Slot for his halftime adjustments too, because we played out from the back with relative ease and put them on skates a little bit in the first half. And rather than fearing us, I thought they brought more bodies forward in their pressure to win the ball earlier, which was a big risk, big reward on their part. But I thought his changes were spot on and really continued to put pressure on us throughout the game. And, he was bold. He played to win. And they found their way through. But again, only in a 3-minute spell. And to our credit, the Villa game yesterday looked a lot like what one might have thought our game would have looked like, right? They had a 1-0 lead. Spurs retook the lead, and then Spurs completely annihilated them. That didn't happen to us. We looked the better team over the rest of the match, which is really encouraging. And I think we've seen again and again the fight in our team. And I think I would credit our manager for that there's a spirit and a belief in this team that is really encouraging. Because looking at us in the back half of last year, it looked like that had taken leave. And it seems to be back in a way that's encouraging. We lost to a really good team. We lost to a really good team who fought admirably at home with sitting top of the table on the line for them.
A team with the luxury of bringing a Luis Diaz and a Curtis Jones into the game in the second half.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, things aren't going to get any more difficult, are they? I mean, we've only got the small matter of, who is it again? Manchester City this weekend. But before we preview that,
they're mid.
Yeah, exactly. What are they without Rodri? Before we preview that, let's talk about our player of the match from the afternoon at Anfield a couple of days ago. So we'll start with you, Dagan. What does your podium look like?
Man, that is tough for this one. The podium, Joe. The podium. I usually work bottom to top. I think it's Bart. Honorable mention. A couple of really nice moments. So I'll put him third. Somebody's got to put the ball in the net, so I'll go Kadioglu. And then it's Ari for me.
Fair enough. What about yourself, Phil?
Yeah, I'm going to give the love to Bart, because watching back over that game, I felt like there were a handful of like really good saves that he made that, if we put a replacement level goalkeeper into that game, I think it could have been the Villa Spurs.
That is good wording. That is such good wording.
So I think his impact was immense. But yeah, and obviously Dagan gave love to Ari. So So I'm allowed to go Bart in that sense. Yeah, but I think those two were the ones that sort of stood out for me.
It's fair enough.
Replacement level goalkeeper, not naming any particular replacement level goalkeepers.
Yeah, who would that be, Phil? Who would that be? Name names.
Maybe Anthony, I think, was what you were thinking of.
Matty Ryan. No. For
Sanchez.
me, yeah. Goodness me. For me, for the sake of being different, because Phil's gone for someone different to Dagan. And obviously, you know, the performance Ayari had was there for all to see. And when Fotmob agrees, you know you've had a good day. But for me, I'm going to go for Ferdy Kadioglu, coming into a different role than what he maybe would have been expecting to play for Brighton over these last few games. And just seems to be really enjoying playing his football at the moment. And you know, getting a goal at Anfield is no mean feat whatsoever. And the quality of the strike as well has to be mentioned. You know, getting it across the goalkeeper, as you say, Dagan, the keeper gets a hand to it, but the strike is just too powerful, and finds its way onto the post and into the back of the net. So, yeah, Ferdy Kadioglu for me, I was so excited when he joined, and I'm just so happy to see that he's enjoying his football and doing well for us. And I'm sure that's going to continue as he adapts to the Premier League and to Fabian Hertzler's, as you say, Phil, bonkers way of playing football, which we all love.
Question. Who do we think is our best option to play that right flank position? Because obviously we've got a young Minter as an option. We won't include Solly March for this because we don't really know where his fitness is at. Kadioglu's looks decent there as well. We've got a Dingra, I suppose, as an option. Joao Pedro can play wide, but yeah, do you think that Ferdy is our best option in that role for the next little chunk of the season?
I really, really like what Ferdy does, and I think the way he plays is just such a joy to watch. He's such a raw footballer, and you know, I think every fan loves that when you've got a player that just doesn't mind picking up the ball and just running forward with it and testing the fullbacks. But I've just given him loads of praise, and I'm going to say it's someone else that I want in that role. The more I'm seeing of Brian Gruder, the more I'm really, really excited to see what he can do given the start. So in an attacking sense, if we're talking about a right-hand side player that's just going to be attacking, I really want to see Gruder there. But yeah, honourable mention to Kadioglu, because as Dagan mentioned earlier, the way he fights with a right back behind him in the defensive phases and going forward, you could argue that he's a more complete option. But yeah, Gruder for me, I really want to see more. What about you, Dags?
What have you done for me lately, types? I tell you, it's Minta for me. I think his ceiling is unbelievably high, and for me, his counter pressing is such a weapon. I think he needs time for his decision making to come along, but I don't think that's any different for the other guys that were just named. I think it's more frustrating maybe with Minta because he creates so many more opportunities that he makes bad decisions more often. But again, they're out of opportunities that largely he's himself created. So for me, he is the choice. I want to see more of him when he's fit. I want to see more of him with our best lineup alongside him. Because I think his doggedness pressing has not yet been matched by the other guys that have played in that role.
Yeah.
He's got to get better than back. I agree with that.
I'll spin the question back onto you, Phil. What about yourself?
Yeah, I knew I was forgetting someone when I put some of those names forward, and obviously Gruder's the one, but I tend to agree with Dagan just in terms of what we've seen with Minter from a creative standpoint. But it does kind of pose that question as to where do we see Kadioglu like best fitting into this team, and maybe it will be just like no one position ever, but we put so much energy into getting him to the club in the summer, and invested quite a bit into him. I feel like I hope that there is a role, that he has the chance to make his own, and he did look good in that role on the right hand side. But perhaps it is at right fullback, and we just need to give him time to settle into that position. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, in terms of that right wing, I mean, I think you look at the most dangerous teams in the Premier League, and they've all got that guy that just has scary pace down a flank and can create in the front third, and that is Minter for mine.
Yeah. It was something in pre-season that caught everybody's eye, the depth that we had in the wide areas, and we've got a couple of guys out on loan as well who we saw a lot of. Phil, I just want to give an honourable mention to Amario what do we call him? Cobra Dudeberry.
Yeah, the Cobra Dudeberry.
So that's a nice little inside joke in the Albion Obsessed podcast chat. So every time you see Amario, just call him Cobra. He'll know. He'll know. Exactly, Dagan. But yeah, I think as we move on, as I say, we've got a big game this weekend, and if we lose this game, just want to remind people, the sky is not falling. It's Manchester City, and they're a wounded animal at the moment. And a lot of people have been saying, "Oh, Dagan, you probably say this. It's the best time to play them. They're beatable when they're on the back of a loss to Bournemouth." I fear a lot. So Dagan, give us your sort of, because you wanted to talk about the bigger picture. So I'll give you the floor now. And what does the rest of this season entail for this club?
The rest of the season, Joe. How many hours do you have here? No, I'll share people that. Of City, well, first they've got to go to Sporting, who's going through their own manager transition in real time right now, midweek. So, they could go get a win there, or they could, go have another disappointment there. So it'll be interesting to see what, both who plays for them. They've got some injuries. Savio is now out indefinitely. De Bruyne could be back for the weekend. We don't know. Rodri certainly is not going to be. He's out for the long term. Every team in the league is beatable, and I would say anywhere this year. I don't think there's an away game this year that is too great, right? And that probably takes me to my other point, which is, if you press pause on where we are, and everybody says nothing matters until 10 games in, we're eighth. We're eighth. We are 4 points out of third. Is that right?
I think we're only 3 points behind Forest, who are third.
So we're 3 points out of third. Among our 10 matches, here are 5 away. Goodison Park against Everton, 3 earned. At Stamford Bridge, we took none away from that. We took 1 away from Emirates against Arsenal. We took 3 at St. James Park. We didn't take any points from Anfield. But when you look at those 5 away fixtures, and if you said before the season, we take 7 from those, I think anyone in our fan base would say, not bad, would take 7 points from those 5. And then home, I'll list the games without the points won in each. Man United, Ipswich, Forest, Spurs, Wolves. You'd probably say you take 9 points. Would it be the 9 that we got? No, that would not be how you would map it out. But you'd take 9 points from those. Maybe you'd want 10, right? But I doubt many would say they'd expect more than that. Maybe knowing what Man U, where they sit now, you would say we should have 12. But the reality is, I don't think many would say we'd win all 15 from the 15. So we got 9 points from those home games. It's just hard to look at that given the amount of injuries, the fact that we have a new manager, the fact that we have so many new players, the fact that some of those new players we haven't even seen yet in the Premier League. It's hard to look at the big picture and be anything but ecstatic, really, about where we are. It's only disappointing for me in the sense of like, we could be so much better. Like, we could be so much better if just a few things had gone our way. That part is painful, and I get people's frustration. But I think every team around the league could say the same thing. They could point to a few moments and say, if only, right? I mean, Arsenal is struggling, but if only different decisions were made around red cards, they might have a lot more points than they do. So you can only rewrite those moments, but so much. So I look at the games we've played, looking at the same fixtures from last year. We are still 6 points better in these fixtures than we were last season. The draw home to Wolves was the same as last year. The loss by 1 goal, 2-1 at Anfield is the same as last year. So not a lot has changed in terms of the overall, calibration of our performance. The way we lost, I get it. It's different. It feels different. But at the end of the day, how it feels doesn't actually matter. Just the points matter. I think there's a lot more reason for optimism than pessimism at this point.
So Dagan, you're good at the maths of what points would leave us where in previous seasons. So at the moment we're averaging 1.6 points per game, and that on average would get us 60.8 points. I know you can't get 0.8 points in the season, but would get us nearly 61 points for a whole season. So by my reckoning, from what I remember, that would be challenging for Europe. What did we end on in our European season? 58, I think.
I lost you, Joe.
So I was just saying that
I lost you.
would. Have you got me back now?
Yep, you're back.
Yeah. So where would 61 points land us in terms of like what would have given us lot previous seasons?
61 would have been good enough for 7th in each of the last 2 seasons. So you're right on that. You're right on that bubble.
Which, Joe, by the way, in most seasons is competing for Europe. And as we mentioned earlier on in the podcast, we were converting a 4v1 last weekend away from currently sitting in equal 4th with 3 fairly large clubs. So yeah, we are right. We are right in that zone right now. That's the reality. And and again, the win, the 3 points that we took away from St. James's Park, if you simulate that match 10 times, we probably only win it twice. They created a lot of chances, and we came from behind against Tottenham at home. Those are 2 of our 4 wins. Things could be worse. Could be worse. I think as I said in our private chat yesterday after the loss, we're probably around a 40 to 50th percentile outcome right now in terms of our expectation. Maybe it is high. Maybe it's 50 to 60. I'm not sure. But, we're 3 points back off a Forest team, which are probably a 99th percentile outcome for their expectation going into the season. So this next little stretch of games is really important, which is not what you want to be saying before you take on the might of Manchester City necessarily. But
no, but you then look at what we've got after Man City in the lead up to Christmas. There's a good few fixtures there where you would expect us to, and I say expect because there's that word again.
Yeah.
But they are, and I hate to say it because teams have said it about us, but they're games that we should be expecting ourselves to go out and win. Nothing is a given in the Premier League. I fully get that. I've seen enough Premier League football to know that. I've seen enough of Brighton to know that nothing is a given. So yeah, let's see. Let's see where we're at come Christmas. Yeah. And Dagan, I'm going to frustrate you and say, fans always go, "Oh, let's see where we're at after 10 games." But in my opinion, it's like, let's see where we're at after Christmas, and then I can start getting excited.
Yeah. Stay tuned. I'm still working on the numbers we talked about last time. We're just sort of projecting out the reverse fixtures, or not the reverse fixtures, but the fixtures from last year and how we're doing relative to that. Because I'm charting it out for all the teams through 10 games. And then I'll sort of run some numbers on, we are adding an additional 0.6 points per match relative to last year. And so where does that take us? Not just where does 6 points ahead take us? I'm interested in that too. That's a little easier. 54 points is where we'd end up if every other match ends exactly as it did last year. It's interesting to me how many matches, as I chart this, end up with the exact same result, same winner or a draw. You see it more than you would think, that the result year over year goes exactly the same way in the majority of matches, it seems. It's fascinating. There is something in the math. It's unpredictable. And that's why I think the table itself can be misleading, because the weight of the schedule is different for everybody. I mean, Forest sits third, but we're about to find out. They play 5 in their next 6. I think they have Newcastle and Villa both at home, with an Ipswich at home, but their other 3 are Arsenal, City, and United away. We may know more about them 6 games from now. Our schedule features a lot more teams lower in the table. Doesn't mean we're going to win all those games, as we've seen, but there's certainly an opportunity there where the math could shift in our favor. Again, if it doesn't, well, then that could be dire. And this is what would happen last year. We had a run of games that we came upon where we thought we've done really well against the tough teams. If we can do well as we should against these teams, we should be in great shape. And that was the stretch where we, drew with Burnley, and they drew with Sheffield, and it was a mess. And the season kind of came unraveled in that stretch of games. So it'll be interesting to see what we do here. The away game to Bournemouth after City now looks like a huge, huge game.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, go on, Phil.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Joe. The difference is obviously that we don't have that Europe schedule to deal with again this season, which other clubs will. And yeah, the fact that we won't, with a deep squad, puts us in really good stead. If we can continue to improve and learn from the mistakes that we've made across this first 10-game stretch, which you would be optimistic to believe that Fabian Hertzler will. And again, it's a young squad. So that's why there's reason to be optimistic. And we're dealing with a couple of injury concerns right now, but the reality is we're not dealing with a bunch of injuries that necessarily almost every other club in the league are dealing with as well. I don't really think that we can point to that right now and say, that's going to make life really tough for us. Whereas obviously last season it did, and it was a factor. But right now we're in a position to go and attack and win games of football. And we should be expecting to do so.
Yeah, I think you made a really good point there. But I'll say there are not many teams that could point to and say our most experienced and arguably maybe our best, but our captain of our defense, the player who's been our best midfielder so far this season, and I would still say our best attacker, are all missing. And we took Liverpool to the wire, at Anfield. It's impressive. And I think that's a testimony to the depth that we have, that those guys could be missing and we can compete with the top teams.
It sounds like Baleba will be back this week. They were just being quite cautious. The fact that he's a young player. Hertzler also referenced the fact that he's been playing on international duty as well. So it sounds like he'll be back, and they were just being really cautious with a young player with a bright future there.
That's good. That is very, very good. And we've spoken so much as well in preseason about our new club doctors and our new physios as well. I'm sure they're working overtime to get players back. But I just want to remind people as well, I've seen a lot of it on Twitter. They're not miracle workers. They're not people that are going to be able to get a brush, paint Matt O'Reilly's ankle, and it'll be fine again. These are human beings we're working with, and they do need to recover well so they can come back well and be okay for the period of games that they're going to play. Obviously, we hope they don't get injured again, but it's football, and injuries happen, and we can just be excited to look forward to the future and see that we've got Donkey coming back, we've got João Pedro coming back, Matt O'Reilly, Solly March still to come back, James Milner, a very experienced head. No matter what you think of James Milner, I think he gives so much, even if he's not on the pitch, even if he's on the bench and barking orders from the sidelines. They're all coming back, and hopefully we'll be rosy. Saying that, I very much look forward to our 0-0 draw against Southampton on the 29th of November. But, it's a day before my birthday, Dagan. They can't ruin it for me. They have to win. They have to win. But
I have to say, it would do my heart so much good if I didn't have to hear but that's not the way the Albion do it kind of running bit of like, we always make it harder on ourselves. That is exactly the same thing that every fan base, certainly of every non-Big Six club, does. Like it is the same line. It's that just sort of self-effacing, of course we're gonna blow it against a team we should beat. And I'm like, can we just not go through this sort of trite, repetitive, it's like an obligation, right? This is obligatory. Like, we've got to make the statement that we're going to blow it against Southampton.
Because if we don't blow it against Southampton, then we have rights to gloat about it.
The thing is, though, Dagan, that reality did become real under De Zerbi, because the blueprint to beat a De Zerbi team became so clear and obvious. Yeah. And that's what was frustrating about the De Zerbi era in the end. The fact that teams knew that they could sit right back, defend, deny us opportunities to create goals, and then score on the counter inevitably. Mm-hmm. So you would like to think that things are going to start to look a little bit different under Hurtsler. That's all I would add.
Yeah. The Hurtsler era is fully underway. Us British fans are still exactly the same.
Sorry.
We expect the people in blue and white stripes to disappoint us every single weekend.
Yeah, that's why the Ipswich draw was so triggering.
And the Wolves draw.
It predates my lifetime, right? As old as I am, I think this sentiment predates me. I mean, it's just ingrained, I think.
I don't think it will ever change. But that's why we love it, right? Because we could turn up this weekend, beat Man City, have the international break, and then lose to Bournemouth. Anyway,
let's just not have James Milner at right back if Jeremy Doku's starting.
Yeah. Phil's just reminded me, not you, Phil, that Phil in the comments. Let's have our score predictions for the Man City game. Dagan, go on, my friend. Are we going to beat them 8-0?
Wow. It's really hard for me.
Are you going to give the Aaron ask me it?
What I will say is, and this is the closest you'll get to the pessimism, I refuse to drop Haaland from my FPL team until he plays us. Because I just refuse to have the week that I drop him be when he's about to play us, in the event that he goes bonkers against us. With that said, this allows me to be happy at least in one part of my existence. Either he kills us or we stop him, which is bad for FPL, but good for Brighton. I'm going to say 1-1 draw after all that hand-wringing.
Okay. Well, I'll take a 1-1 draw. Phil, what are you going with?
Yeah, well, one of my point of differences in FPL right now is owning Foden. So, and I watched him go close I only brought him in a couple of weeks ago thinking that he was going to start to find form, and he was inches away from scoring a couple of goals against Bournemouth. And my worry is that he starts to find the back of the net, as opposed to Haaland, who does look a little bit out of sorts right now, as that whole team does without Rodri, and De Bruyne coordinating things from the middle. But I am optimistic. It's a home game. We can go into a game against any of these, the big six or the teams at the top of the table in the Premier League, because they're not going to sit back and just try and defend and beat us on the counter. So anytime we go against one of these teams, we can go in feeling optimistic about pinching a victory away. So for those reasons, I'm optimistic. Man City, they're in a rough patch right now, and we might be thinking, oh dear, they're going to be so eager to bounce back coming off a couple of defeats, but their Premier League form is win, loss. So it's not necessarily as bad as it might seem on that front. Again, they're the team that has to go and travel midweek as well. They're missing some key contributors right now. I think we beat them 2-1. So I'm with the other Phil.
I mean, if you guys have given your FPL sort of thinkings behind it, let's just have a look at the disaster that is my FPL. Are we ready for this? John Stones in my starting 11, injured. Van de Ven in my starting 11, injured. Cole Palmer in my starting 11 with a yellow thing against his name. Fabio Silva on my bench, injured. Concert on my bench, 0 points. Robinson, 2. João Pedro in my starting 11, injured. As you can tell, I really take FPL very, very seriously. And I've currently got 22 points this weekend. So beat that, everybody. FPL and me, we don't get on. And I set my team at the start of the season and I leave it and see what happens. But
Dagan and I have been flying the flag on that front. I was third in the Albion Obsessed league going into this weekend. I've dropped to 6th off the back of a pretty poor showing, but we're both going pretty well, Dags. So
yeah, well,
yeah, I'm very much looking at dropping Haaland though.
I'm
maybe not this week.
My OR dropped a ton this week, from like around 500k to I think I'm like 900k. It's bad.
Yeah. Anyone below me in the Albion Obsessed FPL, like you should be ashamed, because I literally don't touch my FPL. Enough about FPL. Let me give my score prediction. I've vowed to myself this season to always go with my heart with predictions, and every time I go on a like an opposition fans podcast, I always back the boys to win. So with that, I'm gonna back us. And I was there for the last time we beat Man City after lockdown. I was there for the 3-2 win. 10,000 fans in the Amex, and the noise was ridiculous. It was so good. So I'm backing us to have 30,000 fans going absolutely bonkers, because we're going to beat Man City 1-0.
Look at this. I'm the pessimist. Look at this.
I know.
This is full circle.
How the tables have turned.
We also just picked a game between us and City, and none of us picked us to lose, which is saying something.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I've been pessimistic enough this podcast. I think
I just can't see there only being one goal scored in this game. I'm even thinking of upping it from 2-1 to 3-2 in my prediction, because City's defense has been pretty trash this season as well. How many clean sheets have they had? If it's not 0, it'd only be 1 or 2 out of 10 games. So we're going to score goals. We're probably going to concede goals. I think that's the reality.
They have had, in the Premier League, 2 clean sheets. And that was the opening day against Chelsea and against Southampton.
They haven't been good defensively.
No. They are shipping odd. They've conceded 2 to Fulham. They conceded 1 against Wolves. They've conceded 4 in the last 2 games. So, yeah, if there is any time for us to beat Man City, And I know I contradicted myself earlier, but it would be now. But there is the fear that they are a wounded animal, and a wounded Manchester City is a scary Manchester City. So we'll see what happens. I'm sure it's going to be absolutely fine. I just want to thank everybody in the comments for joining us on this fine Monday evening. Tuesday morning for Phil. Sorry. And before we sign off, I just want to give thanks to the Sports Social Podcast Network for signing us up onto their network. We are running alongside the official Brighton Hove Albion podcast, which is crazy for me to say. So I just want to give a massive thanks to them for believing in this project and allowing us to give our fine voices to their network. So big ups to them. If you haven't done so already, please do subscribe to the Albion Obsessed podcast. We are nearing 1,200 subscribers. At the start of the season, we were only on just over 900. So the growth of the channel this season has been fantastic, and it's so good to chat along with you guys on these live streams as well. So do keep joining the lives as we do them. They really do make us very happy. So thank you very much. And we're going to sign off for this week, but do join us next week after we've beaten Manchester City. Wherever you may be, whenever you may be, take care, everybody. Cheers.
Cheers.